That matters.
Text 0868 104 106. I'm joined by Eddie Hobbs, who last year had an open meeting, I believe a monster meeting for people on Leeside that was free. It was jam-packed. They had to turn away a couple of hundred. And for those of you that might like to go, if you weren't at the last one, although I'm sure that maybe the narrative has changed since then, he's in the Raddisson Blu. It's a free event Thursday night, 6 o'clock for 7. He joins me by phone. Eddie, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
I'm quite sure at this stage that you have an actual list of topics that you're going to deal with. Just talk us through what are the bullet points that you'll be bringing to Cork on Thursday night?
Well, I'll be dealing with the key matters really that are not being dealt with by the main media in Ireland, and really that has to do with a number of different things that are all interconnected, and it's also linked to a book that I just brought out again, which is free online, about all of this, and it's really about the rise of what we can see globally as kind of whereby a kind of and there's an attempt being made to put in place a control grid that'll affect all of us, all of our families, how we spend money, where we spend it, all being monitored. The ECB, that's the European Central Bank, are kicking that off as early as August this year.
How will we be controlled and monitored and told what to do?
Yeah, because we will be, firstly, it will come in the form of a digital ID, which will then contain your passports, your travel passports, your vaccine passports, and then it will be linked to this new currency that's coming in, which is the European Central Bank digital currency. It sounds like a mouthful, but it's basically where instead of having currency created by the existing banks, AIB, Bank of Ireland, and all the rest of them, this will be directly created by the central bank itself. You'll have a wallet, and that will be the first time ever in human history that money will be programmable by a centralised computer. In other words, the computer will be deciding what you can spend your money on.
Well, where you get but Eddie, let me push back on that. How do you know that? Where you get that information? Because that would lead me to believe that you're saying that they can turn you on and turn you off financially whenever they want. I mean, that's bizarre.
No, it's bizarre, but it's bizarre because it's the first time probably that it's been discussed openly. But I mean, this was declared 4 years ago by the head of an organisation known as the Bank for International Settlements. He's a Mexican guy, former governor of the Central Bank of Mexico, called Augustus Carstens. You can't miss him. He's an enormous man, and he said that when this happens, which is now happening, we will know where every single $100 bill or 100 peso bill is being spent, by whom, to where, who's getting it, and how. Everything will be under surveillance.
Kind of is already, though, isn't it? It kind of is already with regards to the banks, and Revolut have moved very much in that direction. They can tell everything you spend, what you spend it on, and then they sell that information to marketeers and advertisers. It's already with us, though, isn't it? It's capitalism.
Yeah, well, no, it's not actually. It's the opposite. It's totalitarianism, because in this case, the central bank will be deciding what you can spend your money on. At the moment, you're right. I mean, if I'm using Revolut or I'm using a credit card, I decide what I'm going to spend my money on. It's not decided by the bank, provided, of course, I'm not spending it by hiring hitmen or terrorists or buying drugs. I can do whatever I like. So it's completely changed.
Why would they want that kind of control over us or what we spend, or indeed our control of our borders, which I think is another aspect you'll be dealing with Thursday night? Why?
It's coming at many, many levels. So what's driving the need for control? And the answer is it's the oligarchs. It's a particular bunch of oligarchs sitting behind all of these agencies, the UN, the WHO, all of that kind of stuff, the World Health Organization, the World Economic Forum, all of those. And they want total control. Because if you've total control, you have total power, and you've dynastic wealth. Your family's wealth is guaranteed for hundreds of years, as they would see it themselves. So
it's quite alarmist, though. It's quite alarmist if you kind of take that point that you've made and just extend it a little bit to people's personal savings, then, or their own personal wealth. Are you suggesting there would be control over that as well? Because somebody listening to this will say that's tin pot, that's tin hat stuff. No.
Yeah, no. They'll keep thinking that and saying that unless they open their minds to what's happening and engage with the material. And you can't engage with the material or open your mind to it by reading the mainstream media in Ireland, because they won't cover the topics.
Why?
They're not covering it. Because it's not in their interest to cover it. I mean, look, I have a very strong opinion, as you know, that in Q1 2020, the mainstream media, with some exceptions, Neil, you would be one of them, the fourth estate died, walked off the pitch, and just engaged in one side of a major global story. And as a consequence of that, 5.5 billion people, including me, members of my family, and all my family members have been subject to taking an experimental vaccine.
Okay, so now you're into the WHO. Will you be dealing with this? The pandemic emergencies, lockdowns?
Well, that'll be part of it, but I'm also getting into the data now. It's pouring out all the medical information, the people I've interviewed, what they've said, and the information that's coming out throughout the world, which is not being published in the Irish media, about the level of all-cause, in the increase in deaths, the increase in disabilities and harms as a consequence of this, is not being covered. And I'll also be talking about, the hottest topic in town, which we have to be careful on this, and that's the lax borders across Europe. Where is it coming from? Who's driving it? Why isn't there more rigorous control? You can see it happening slowly, and the reason why it's now changing is because throughout Europe, in every country, Germany, France, Austria, Holland, Finland, Sweden, they've all the window's shifting. The public view is shifting.
So is the Irish public view is shifting too? Do you believe there are politicians? I mean, Micheál Martin has come out and said that maybe we've got some parts of that wrong. Leo Varadkar very much said that recently, and I think that Jim O'Callaghan has rolled his sleeves up on this, the new Minister for Justice, and he's saying that this is not sustainable. Even though I've read some Irish politicians saying that we need to be part of a bigger, more diverse Ireland and welcome more people.
Well, I'm just off. Listen, the last interview I did there was a lawyer in Denmark, and just talking about all of this. And the Danes had an opt-out from the EU Migration Pact. So they didn't voluntarily enter it. We entered it. We had an opt-out under the Lisbon Treaty not to join the Europe, not to hand over our border numbers and our border controls to unelected bureaucrats in Brussels.
But the only control that we don't have at the moment, it would seem, would be those coming in without paperwork under IPAS, and we're not sure, and people are worried about who they might be and what kind of background checks have not been done on them. Are you suggesting it's bigger than even that?
Well, I'm suggesting two things. Firstly, it's fine to hear the Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael politicians coming out, finally beginning to listen to the will of the people on this matter, because they didn't last year, because they all voted to join the European Migration Pact, all of them. Every single TD in the Dáil that was a member of the Green Party, Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil voted to join the pact, despite the fact that every single independent TD voted against it, because they were getting their instructions from their constituents, whereas those in power, well, they were getting their instructions from above. They were getting it from the EU. That's they were being told to do this.
Okay, so when you hear and when you see, and it's a big topic of conversation the past 48 hours, Conor McGregor in the White House with the ear of Donald Trump, and then you see, say for instance, Micheál Martin, Simon Harris pushing back, saying he does not speak for us.
McGregor said what he said, but what he said, leaving aside all of the issues around Conor McGregor, and I can understand, the reaction from Simon Harris. I think it was very ill-advised to give the reaction he gave. It was quite spiteful and angry, and it just wasn't the right political move.
It wasn't spiteful nor angry. He just said he doesn't talk for Irish people. That's all.
Well, no, there was. That was my reading of it anyway. It was just a little bit snarky, right? And I can understand why, because McGregor's pissed on the chips. But what he has said, he said something that an awful lot of people believe. They feel very strongly about it. I'm not talking. No, this isn't about. This is just about the actual volume of people coming in as refugees and asylum seekers. A lot of them fake, some of them not. When you look at the massive increase in numbers over the last number of years, and you scratch your head and say, why is this happening? How is it happening? And why is it? Why is it the planning laws are being set aside and IPAS centres are being put in against the will of the local people? Why is all that happening? Where is it being driven from? I'll be giving the answers to all those things on Thursday evening.
Here's one thing that was concerning me, though, and I'm even slow to bring it up because I regard it as a very offensive term. You will be talking on Thursday night about queering kids' classrooms. Why do you use that word when it's such a derogatory, offensive word to use?
No, it's not. It's actually not. It's actually the correct word to use, Niall. Just to pull you up on that one. That's the terminology that's used. Critical race, critical theory, when it comes to the area of transgender.
And is this to do with the issues regarding the trans community or the use of pronouns, etc.?
No, it has to do with it has to do with the CAS report. So we now have science, which came out in Britain in April last year, which was over 4 years of study into the whole area of transgender affirmation ideology. In other words, that somebody who's confused about their gender, that you affirm their confusion. You affirm how they believe. You play along with it. And this all came out of a view. It's called the W path, which is a particular ideology that came out of an activist group in California in 1979. And we just followed it forward, and everybody's gone along with it. And now finally there's a scientific study in the country next door under Barbara Cass. And this study has completely changed the approach in the United Kingdom. And it's saying that affirmation ideology is very damaging for children. And we need to completely change what we're doing. And they went on then to change it. So they now have 8 centres where there's a group of multidisciplinary doctors around anybody that's got this confusion, and it's led by the lead doctor on the apex of each one of these is responsible for child
safety. But you'll be saying to people that this is confusion, when others would say that it's not confusion, that it could be biological, it could be psychological, it could be lots of different.
It could be. I'm repeating the findings of the CAS report, which is the science, and I'm simply saying that look, this will eventually be adopted in Ireland, but there's not even a discussion on it, and it hasn't come up in mainstream media at all. The CAS report, the science.
And has there been a price for you to pay as well in the past, in the sense that you get less coverage now because of the views that you hold, which are very important to you and you're very passionate about it? Has that come at a price?
Well, it's a price I'm quite happy to pay. I mean, I've spent my life challenging the state establishment. I did it in Rip-Off Republic. I did it way before that with the Consumer Association. I've always challenged the state. I've the whole pile of headstones of ways that we thought, including if you remember the groceries order back 20 years ago. I managed to get that taken down through some piece of comedy with Rip-Off Republic. So I've always had a strong sense of what's the justice here? What's the social justice? And people always, I ask it myself, well, why am I driven this way? The answer is I don't know. I'm like a dog. I have to bark. You can't ask me not to bark. I've tried not to bark many times, Neil. I've tried to walk off the pitch. I just can't. Okay. Eddie Hobbs will be barking at the Raddisson Blu. It's free Thursday night, 6 o'clock for pre-chats and 7 o'clock for the main event. Good luck with that, Eddie. Thanks so much for taking the call. Neil. You're very welcome. Thank you.
Call Neil now. 0818 104 106.
The Neil Prendeville Show on Red FM.
Thank you to everybody who's getting in touch, particularly the conversation yesterday with Trish and her 7-year-old son. That poor lady and her son at the train station in it was Little Island, and she wanted to go to Cove. That stuff has been happening in New York for the past couple of years. And again, they were not New Yorkers. We need to take notice now before things get out of hand, says Lisa. I was saying that something like that in Little Island at St. Patrick's Day was the kind of threat which you see followed through on the subways of New York, literally pushing people under moving trains. Hey, Papa, if anyone crossed the tracks and punched that gentleman, it would have been called a hate crime, wouldn't it? I don't see the relevance to events in the UK. Well, I do see the relevance. I see the relevance in all of those things because everything follows. And with social media, you see that more and more now. Information gets shared, it gets disseminated, and so do issues with regards to criminality. Knife crime, big in the UK, big problem there. Slowly but surely it started here. Drugs, whether it's coming from America or from Europe or the UK, big problem. Gets worse here in time. I'm sorry I can't take a call, but on the topic of adolescence, there was a school in Australia that forced all of the boys in the school aged 10 to 16 to apologise to all of the girls for world male violence and because they're male. Can you imagine that? They were apologising to girls in class for their gender. I would be apoplectic, wouldn't you? They went home thinking that they're a problem. It was an absolute disgrace. I dislike Conor McGregor and all he stands for, but I'm thrilled that he spoke out about what's happening to our country, and the Taoiseach and the Taoiseach are not listening to the Irish people. I voted differently this time because all the independents in Sinn Féin, but they have gone all very quiet on immigration since they got into office. Thank you for that text. I can't quite follow there. Did you vote independence? Did you vote Sinn Féin? Did you vote differently to how you did in the past? Conor McGregor was not elected, has no mandate, does not speak for the Irish people, says the political establishment isn't telling the same political establishment, has no such issues when... I'm sorry, that makes no sense. I'll come back to it when I edit it. I agree wholeheartedly, although I don't like Conor McGregor, I can understand what he is saying. The government has done many things that they have no mandate for. And if you look at the news feed every week, it appears there's somebody before the courts with vicious crimes. Texter here suggesting that it's not always Irish. That's always going to be the way, though. You know, I mean, you're going to have people who aren't Irish living here, working here, breaking the laws here. I think what you're saying is that maybe the problem could be, it could be a foreign national who's unvetted here. Like I was telling the story yesterday morning of the guy who was only hours in the country, had previous, as long as your arm, in the UK for all sorts of assault of a different violent nature, and came over to Ireland and raped a woman, and you're wondering how would he ever get into the country. The country's had enough for the woke leftist community. I bet you won't read this out because your radio station is all leftist communist station. Been called an awful lot of things, but a communist, that's the first time. Thank you for that. Oh my God, I just read your text out. You suggesting that I just wouldn't. Back to the phone lines we go. Fiona, good morning.